Hey guys, I'm back again and I'm here to do my Unhaul video. So a lot of you seem to be really interested in what I was getting rid of. So here is a portion of what I'm getting rid of because I do have a lot that I'm getting rid of. I mean, it's not that bad, but I think it needs to be done, you know, for me to feel better. So let's get started. First books that I'm getting rid of are these three right here. Ali Smith's seasonal series. I have autumn, winter, and spring. Gotta go. I had to read this one, which is spring. I had to read it for the BookTube prize. I think it was last year. No, the year before last. I hated it. Hated it. So a friend of mine wants all three of these, so I'm quite happy to gift them to her. I'm sure she will appreciate them. Okay, next book I have on my list is 3/5 by John Vircher. Vircher. This was published in 2020. This is an arc, and this book actually came out and it got no play. But you know, it didn't really stick with me. It is a story about I think it's a guy who's mixed race. And there's like a whole situation with him and his white friend. And yeah, like I you know, it was good, but I didn't think it was great. So I don't want to keep it. And it's an arc anyway. So bye-bye. Okay, next on my list I have this, which is Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. I did read this one. Can you believe? This is supposed to be the godfather of sci-fi. And this is a major big classic in sci-fi, but I personally hated it. It was just really weird. It just felt like some kind of, you know, 60s free love situation. I don't know. It just was really weird. I read this with my book club in Normandy, and I think it was about a half-half. Half of the book clubbers liked it. The other half did not. They were like me. Super long and super weird. And next book on my list I have Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. I really like this book. I thought it was excellent, but I will never read it again. So I will be gifting this to the same friend that is taking the Ali Smiths. And it turns out that her husband is Scottish. So I'm sure she really wants to read this one. But it's an excellent book, but I will never read it again. Okay, this one is Herta Mueller's The Appointment. She was a Nobel Prize winner. I don't remember in what year. I read this book years ago, and it was boring as I don't know what. Just boring, depressing, and it kind of reeked of how do you say, Cold War, sadness, gray, bleak. Yeah, was not for me. I read it, but I didn't like it. Next on my list is Negro Land, a memoir by Margot Jefferson. All right, now this one came out, and I was seriously interested in reading this one. This one came out in 2015, but I could not get into this book. I don't know what it is about this style of writing. This is supposed to be a memoir, but this was a memoir that held me at a distance, and I could not seem to get into the book. I think I read, yeah, like I think I just read up to, let's see, where is this? Page 50. And I checked out. And I tried to read it. I think I tried to read it 2 other times, and it didn't get any better. And I'm not really sure what it is about this writing, but it does not call me to keep reading it. It calls me to close the book and read something else, sadly. Because this is about a black woman who lives in a more upper middle class family. So with money and, you know, a easier life living in the U.S. And yeah, I just couldn't get into it. Next on my list It's Frying Plantain by Zalika Reed Benta. This was the June read for the Read So Lit Book Club last year. I think it was maybe last year. And this book was so disappointing to me. Like, it had been blurbed so much as being an excellent book, but I just felt like, what am I reading? So it's supposed to be a novel, but it reads like a short story. The main character does things that don't make sense. The short stories, well, it's supposed, they don't say it's short stories, but it's definitely short stories. For me, it was, at least. They don't link up properly. There's things that are there that don't link up to anything when she could have actually linked them to things. And there's not enough perspective from her family's point of view. It's essentially around her, but yet they do introduce us to other characters in her family, like her mother. Like, we don't get enough perspective even on her mother, to know why she does and says the things that she does. And then we're introduced to her grandfather and her grandmother, and they're kind of funny. But we don't get enough on their perspectives to really understand what they're doing either. So it's a very odd story, and I'm not sure why the editing wasn't done better. Gotta go bye-bye. Okay, next on my list to go bye-bye is Fever by Mary Beth Keane. Now, this is the one, it's a historical fiction about Typhoid Mary. And I read this one with my book club in Normandy, and I was really hoping that this was going to be really, really good. But in fact, it was really, really boring, and the writer couldn't seem to fill in the spaces well enough to make an interesting story around Typhoid Mary. And I found that to be extremely disappointing. I highly, do not recommend you read this one. Okay, next book on my list is Halsey Street by Naima Coster. This book right here annoyed the crap out of me. I read it. I hated it. I hated profoundly the main character. This main character is just off-putting. And here again, does things like it's almost predictable what she's going to do. But we're always questioning, like, why is she doing that? Why is she saying that? This book made me seriously angry when I finished reading it. I was just like, you know what? And I have not wanted to pick up a Naima Coster since. So this book really was just not my cup of tea. So gotta go. Next book on my list is this one, Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. Now, this one was a big hit. I think it was the year of 2020. Not so much for me. This was about a 3-star for me. I don't think this book goes in deep enough on race. I mean, it's supposed to be sort of like a lighthearted storytelling around a young black girl who is a nanny or a babysitter for a little white girl. And eventually what happens is this becomes like her job, and then it goes into how this little girl's mother, how she interjects herself into this young black woman's life with no regard to what she's saying or doing, if any of that makes sense. And then they add a couple of other things in here that I just feel like are damn distractions. They don't really help get to the point of the book. So it's not a bad book. It's just not a great one. Okay, next book on my list to go bye-bye is Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Water Dancer. I don't need to say nothing else about this because I did a review, or tried to do a review. This book is terrible. I'm sorry. This is a terrible book. Like, my recommendations is Ta-Nehisi Coates, don't ever do this again. Stick to your nonfiction. Stay in your lane. That's all I got to say. Okay, this is a book that I should have given away years ago, and this was passed to me from a friend, and I was supposed to read it and pass it on to someone else. That hasn't happened, so it's gonna happen. I'm gonna pass it on to someone else. I already own my copy of this book, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading. Wonderful story. If you haven't read Rebecca, but I need to pass this on. This is a book from a World Book Night in 2012. Damn, I should have passed this on in 2012 and I still ain't passed it on. So I'm gonna pass it on. All right, next on my list I have a Quickie Amazee's The Death of Vivek Oji. This got to go to... I wasn't in love with this one. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. I found it predictable. And I was expecting more from this story. There were parts that felt very gratuitous to me. And yeah, very disappointing because I went in thinking this one was going to be excellent. And it was just okay. It was good. 3 stars. These two right here, they definitely got to go. So I bought this one when it came out and I never got to it. And then I read this one when it came out, and I read this one last summer and I hated it. I read this one and I hated it. The most boring ass story. And it's sort of like those kind of stories where you read the story and you're like, why the heck does this author think I care about what it is she talking about right here? Nobody cares about this. This is the oddest, weirdest way, or should I say, the oddest, weirdest storytelling I think I've read in a minute. That just kind of makes me shake my head and go, who told her this made sense and who told her that this was interesting? So I would give this a 2-star. She can clearly write, but she doesn't know what she's writing about. Then I put together that these two are connected. So I tried to read this and it didn't happen. So they both going bye-bye. Next on my list is Cassandra at the Wedding by Dorothy Baker. And this one I read, I think it was 2020. The year 2020 with my Normandy book club. And I didn't like this book at all. This book felt like white privilege book. And it felt like that right from the beginning. And I was just like, no, I think we're going to be, we're not going to really like this. There's a line in here that really annoyed me. It was, we could live someplace else, couldn't we? I heard her say, we could live in Paris. We'd look just as much alike in Paris as we do here, but it wouldn't matter. They'd overlook it. That's why colored people go to Paris. To be overlooked, I said. I'm not sure I want to be overlooked. And I don't want you to be either. When I read that line right there, I was like, the fuck no. Mm-mm. And that was on page 11. Next book on my list was The White Tiger, Aravan Adiga. And this is one of my favorite books, but I'm giving it away because I want to get a better edition of this book. I'm looking for a hardcover of The White Tiger. I adore this story. I highly recommend this. If you haven't read it, pick it up. Now, I know they've done a Netflix film of this one. I'm not sure how that went, but the book is good. Next on my list is Cersei by Madeline Miller. Read this one in, I think it was 2018 when it came out. Is it 2018? Yeah. Came out in 2018. I absolutely love this cover. It's gorgeous and everything. But old girl gotta go because I didn't love it that much. Like, I don't love it enough for it to take up this much space on my bookshelf. The big book, Beautiful. But I don't want it taking up all the space because I will probably never read or want to read Cersei again. That's a fact. Next book on my list is Shadow Shaper by Daniel Jose Older. Now, this is a book that was gifted to me, I think it was, by a friend. I read it. It was all right. It's not my cup of tea, this kind of thing. This, kind of sci-fi fantasy. It ain't my bag, okay? So it got to go. Taking up room. Next on my list, and this is one that's really taking up some room, that's got to go. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Gots to go. Okay. This was supposed to be like a dual narrative with a young French girl who's blind and a young German guy who's a soldier, young soldier. And, you know, this is taking place between Paris and Saint-Malo. This is a beautiful cover because this is a beautiful picture of Saint-Malo and everything. But the story was cheesy and a little bit too cliche for my liking. So, yeah, and when he describes life in Saint-Malo, it's just kind of like, this is not life in Saint-Malo in the 1940s. But, yeah, I read it. I didn't like it, and it's going to have to go. Next book is The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell. So, this is the book about a Scottish bookseller, and he talks about what it's like owning a bookstore and what that entails and the difficulty of being a bookseller and how Amazon has ruined everything for everyone. And yeah, it was fun while I read it, but I don't want to read it again. And I think I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Next is Major Pettigrew's Last Stand by Helen Simison. This one is another one that I read with my Normandy book club. I remember liking this one enough. Yeah, liking it actually quite a bit. But do I want to read it again? No. Do I want to keep it? No. This one, if I remember correctly, this one is about an Indian origin woman and an Englishman who is Major Pettigrew. And he and this woman, this Indian origin woman, they kind of fall for each other. With all of their differences, they manage to fall for each other. It's a good book. I recommend it. But I need room on my shelf. This is not a book that I will be rereading. The next book is You Can't Touch My Hair by Phoebe Robinson. You must know Phoebe Robinson. She has an IG channel. She is a comedian. I think this was her first book. I read it. I liked it. I thought it was funny in parts. Do I want to keep it? No. Do I want to read it again? No. Do I recommend it? Yes, I recommend it for people who are very familiar with American culture. If you're not familiar with American culture, you may pick this up and not catch half the jokes. So yeah, gots to go. Next on my list to go is The Far Field by Madhuri Vijay. And this one I read for the BookTube prize. I think it was the first year I did the BookTube prize. I think it might have been 2020. Yeah, it was in 2020 because this came out in 2019. And this is a story about a young Indian girl who takes a trip to Kashmir, and she learns a lot about these Kashmirian people and their culture, and stuff happens, and the book starts going really wacko crazy. But as a whole, I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. I think I would still stand by that 4 stars. But do I have the desire to read this again? No. Next book I have on my list is Black Klansmen, Race Hate, and the Undercover Investigation of a Lifetime by Sergeant Ron Stallworth. So this is the book which was written by Ron Stallworth, who actually answers an ad in the paper to join the Klan. And he actually is the first black man to actually join the Klan. So nobody knows that he's black. And then this turns into a way for them to spy on the Klan and see what they're up to and stuff. And it is a very interesting story, the way it's told in the sense of what happens and everything. Now, Ron Stallworth, because this writing is just not, it ain't it. Okay, it's not popping, his writing. But as he's telling the story, that's pretty amazing. I didn't enjoy Spike Lee's rendition of this particular novel because it felt too comedic and not enough realistic. But yeah, but do I want to read it again? Absolutely not. The next book on my list is The Personal History of Rachel Dupree by Anne Weisgarber. This was a book that I read for my Normandy book club. And I had high hopes for this one because it's about a black family that has a farm out on South Dakota Badlands in 1917. So I was very anxious to read this one, but I was sadly slightly disappointed because you can feel that the writer is not black. Because of the way she depicts the family, there's something that's off about it. And you can feel that right from the beginning. Other than that, it is an interesting story about this family living in the Badlands of South Dakota. But I wouldn't say it's like 4 or 5 stars or anything. So it's going to have to go because I will never read this again. Next book on my list is Sugar Money by Jane Harris, which I thoroughly enjoyed this book. But this is another book that talks about slavery. It's written by a white woman, but I think she's written it pretty well. And it's based off of, I think it's supposed to be 2 young black men who work for monks, French monks. And they are charged to go to Grenada and to smuggle back 42 slaves for these monks. And so we follow them on this journey. And this one has all the bells and whistles. It's beautiful. The cover, is gorgeous. There's, interior maps and stuff. You have everything going for this has everything going for it. I just don't want to reread it. It has some pretty brutal slave treatment written in this book, like super intense and awful to read. Super brutal. There's some that that was my stack falling over and knocking the camera. Big stack. So I don't think I will ever want to read this one again. It was brutal. It was well written, and I think the story, she does try to advance it a little bit like the story itself, because it's supposed to be a real story. But I will not read this again. The last book on my list is Sadie Smith's Intimations. Nope. I don't care. I didn't care. I read this one, I think it was the year 2020 when it came out. Let me just make sure. Yep, 2020, April 2020. I remember picking this one up and reading it and just thinking, but why? But why did you write this, Zadie Smith? Why didn't you just take your time and write some fiction? It's like essays about, this, that, and the other one. No. It's not what we're looking for. It just really isn't what we're looking for. It's boring, and it was just a way for, this is sold at $10.95. So this little slim novel, $10.95. It's not worth it. Don't pick it up. Get it from a friend or the library or something, but don't buy it. So I'm getting rid of mine, even though it's slim and doesn't take up a lot of room. But I didn't love it. So there you have it. Those are some of the books that will be leaving my home soon, hopefully. Some of them are going to a friend, and the others I think I'm going to try to sell online. And then whatever else I can't sell, I'll be donating either to my local library if they will take them, or they have these organizations where they take old books and clothes and stuff and they sell them. So I might just pack up a bunch of these and send them over there, the stuff that I can't sell. So there you have it. That's my unhaul. As you can tell, most of them I actually read, so that's not a bad thing. I'm like kind of making room for things that I really, really love and will want to reread, and things that are left to read, So let me know what you think. If you want to try to convince me to keep one of these, but I doubt you can convince me. I'm just saying, because I need the space. So yeah, let's talk about it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.